Hello, my name is JC Cortez, and I'm the Director of Training and Development here at Synergia. Welcome to this morning's webinar over sexuality and sex ed, an active conversation. This is a continuation of our webinar last week where we had sexuality and sex ed, what every parent needs to know. We're happy to have our guest presenter, Ms. Consuelo Senior, with us from YAI, who I'll introduce here in a second. But a little brief word on who Synergia is. Synergia has been serving New Yorkers and their families for over 40 years. And here at the Parent Center, at the Metropolitan Parent Center, we offer parent trainings related to special knowledge and enhancing advocacy skills of parents. We focus on parents that have special needs themselves or that may have language needs. So we're always focusing on that. And we're serving unserved and underserved communities as well across the 5 boroughs. We also provide one-on-one bilingual special education assistance to help parents resolve special education issues. We also have the Autism Initiative, which provides support and training to parents of children with ASD, including an after-school arts program and a social skills program for children and young adults. Lastly, we are one of the 3 federally funded parent centers, as you see here, and we are always supporting and uplifting each other's work across the city. So that's a little brief bit on who we are. I want to introduce now my colleague, Ms. Consuelo Senior from YAI. She is a psychotherapist and a clinician. She is very well experienced and well-versed in sexuality and sex education training across the city. You see her face in a lot of places, especially on this topic. She's a strong advocate and an incredible, amazing human being. And we're so happy to have her back. I could go through her long list of accomplishments, but honestly, just let's get to the conversation and let's just have a great time. And really, I hope everybody learns so much from this. And this is an opportunity to really ask anything that we haven't covered that you'd like to know some more about. So please don't be shy. And also welcome to our Facebookers. I forgot to say hello. Just a quick little housekeeping tip. Everybody will receive a copy of a link to the recording, as well as well, there are no slides actually. So there'll be a link to the recording. And if we have any additional tools or resources that we discover together, then we'll try to incorporate that as well into the follow-up email that we'll send after this presentation. So thank you for being here and feel free to share it. We always want to get this information, vetted information, to people that really need it. So I'll stop and let my colleague go. Good morning, Consuelo.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. It's so awesome. Thank you so much, JC. And thank you so much to the interpreters for just allowing this to be possible as well. We know this is a topic that is a kind of tricky topic, and it's not something that's, very comfortable for some people to talk about. So again, thank you so much for everyone who is here. It is awesome. This is an investment into your child's future or the people who you support. So thank you again for taking this bold step to get this information and to share this information. So like JC said, this is, I'm hoping that everyone would ask questions. I do have some questions here that people had put in. So we're going to go between this and also any questions that you put in the chat. I'm absolutely going to be answering that. So let's get started. As we're going through the questions, one of the things that I wanted to just review is what is sexuality? So I just want to remind everyone, you'll hear me go often back to a visual that we're going to see in what sexuality is. That sexuality, sex is a small part of sexuality. Sexuality encompasses the whole being, right? Who you are as a person, who are you attracted to, your self-image, what do you think about yourself and your worth, self-esteem, sexual health, which starts from puberty, right? The minute that you start puberty, then you absolutely should be addressing sexual health because it involves the sexual organs. So talking about what sexuality is, I think, self-worth, it's your need for approval. If those of you who were here from last time, remember that part of sexuality is wanting to love and be loved, and that throughout the developmental span, there are different needs, and that children with neurodevelopmental disorders, intellectual disability, autism, ADHD, biologically develops the same way as someone who is neurotypical. So, also bearing that in mind as we go through the needs for today. So I'll start with some of the questions. JC, I don't know if do we have the visual of the sexuality wheel?
Yes, give me 1 second. Hmm.
Awesome. So again, this is as a reminder of what sexuality is. So whenever you hear it's a sexuality training or it's sex education, because often we hear sex education and, I've heard from many parents. I've been in this field for 24 years and I've been doing psychotherapy for 17 years. And I know I've heard from many parents, it's sexuality training. So it must include or it must involve wanting to teach my kids about sex. But sexuality, it has a small bit to do with the actual act of sex. So just as a reminder, and as we're going through today, I may be connecting things back to this wheel, right? It talks about my body. How do you teach about the body and the functions of the body? And when do you do that? And that we're starting from really small, right? So I'll do a little bit of review from as early as kids start talking, using those moments like a shower, while you're bathing, to talk about the body and talk about the names of the body. We say the eyes, we say the elbow, we should also give them the biological name, that it's a penis, that it's the buttocks, that it's the vulva. I know some people may still say vagina, either or, but not using words like the patty cake or the cookie. Can we just go back to the other one a little bit? Thank you. Yeah. And then, here is sexual reproductive health, right? So remember again, for puberty, starting preparing children for puberty. In the context that they can understand, but things like practice picking out a sanitary napkin before they start menstruating, putting something on their sanitary napkin that's like blood so that it helps them to see what it's going to look like, talking about how to wrap it up and dispose of it before it starts. There's some children who their first menses has traumatized them because they weren't aware of it. They thought they were bleeding to death. It's something bad. It's something wrong with them. So preparing them for males, those people in male bodies, to prepare them for wet dreams, right? To prepare them for those awkward moments when they're gonna get an erection and they don't even know why. Because then what happens is in the classroom, then oftentimes they'll end up having that erection in class, and that leads to a whole lot of other things. Preparing them for those things. Masturbation. I was going to talk a little bit more about masturbation, but understanding developmentally where that falls when they're younger and then also when they become adults. Understanding what feels good. For children who are at the severe to profound cognitive level, and lower moderate level, often it's, I touch it, it feels good. And so they'll continue to touch it when they're bored, when they're anxious about something, when they're scared. They're going to go to what feels good for them. It isn't so much that they're actively thinking, I'm going to masturbate at this moment. And what's needed then, it's not a stop it, it's bad. It's the place to do that is in private. Again, a little bit of review from last time, that it's important for children to understand the concept of privacy and that they're allowed that space, right? Developmentally, it's important. For masturbation, or if you want to call it self-touch, some people call it me time, that's important that they understand that's where they have me time, in a room with their door closed, in the bathroom with their door closed, or in a bedroom rather, in their bedroom with the door closed, or in the bathroom with the door closed. Understanding that difference between when they can express it, right? So not that touching themselves or pleasuring themselves is wrong, but where to do it. Body image, how you feel about yourself. Bear in mind that in terms of representation, How often do you see children in wheelchairs or children with physical disabilities, or, you know, that's in print, in ads? I think it's got a little bit better, but not good enough, right? So thinking of someone who may need ADL support and maybe in a disposable diaper, thinking of someone who may have braces, or, you know, that remember that that body image is not just their body, but anything else that they need, and that should be personalized. Um, so how are we helping them to feel positive about the body that they're in? Society may make them feel something is wrong with it, but as parents, that's that firm foundation of reminding them all the time that they're beautiful. Not just a general, you're beautiful, but help them to identify aspects about themselves. Your hair is gorgeous when it's curly. I love to see the way that that color brightens up your eyes. You know, help them to know the aspects about themselves that's positive. You know, I think for many of us, if we had a chance, we would probably find all kind of things that we would correct about ourselves, right? So there may be people who are 100% okay with themselves, but it's okay to help children to understand nobody's body is perfect. So identify the things that are awesome about them. Beautiful smile, the way someone walks. So that helps to build that positive body image. Relationships, again, these are all parts of sexuality. So I'm sure many of the questions that are going to be asked today, they're all going to be connected somehow to this wheel. So when we talk about sexuality, you may hear me again connected to, let's see what part of sexuality that is. Because sexuality has parts to the whole. So relationships, it's important that we know children will love their parents or their caregivers. It's important that we understand that developmentally, they're going to need to show that love to friends, and they're going to want to learn how to have a special person, that intimate person. And it's important for us to help them to explore these different aspects of love, not just for the parent, but for a friend or for a sweetheart. And then gender identity and expression. Again, who am I? I think the biggest thing to remember with gender identity and expression is creating an atmosphere where they can talk about it, right? So where they can ask questions, or at least that they can come to you and you can then refer to someone who they can get. You don't have to know the answers. As parents, we don't have to have the answers to everything. It's knowing that there is someone who you can go to. Okay. So yeah, the next one, JC, thank you. Again, a reminder of Freud, the Freudian stages, looking at, again, this is not just for children with IDD or children without IDD. This is for all children. So they'll go through that stage, right? 3 to 6 years. For some, it's younger, from 2. It's the child's pleasure focuses on genitals or focuses on the anus. So there's going to be that need. They discover their genitals. You know, I always tell the story, and my son has heard this a million times, but when he was 2, he discovered his genitals, and anyone who came through the door, he showed his, just like he would show off his truck or his dinosaur. For him, it was really a lot about dinosaurs. He would also show off this new thing he found on his body. Understanding that that is a natural part that children go through. And then if you notice, when he says puberty onward, here goes a sexual reawakening, right? So here is where those wet dreams, this is where someone may then have a young person in a male body now has erections and can't control them, doesn't know what to do with them. They're not bad. They're hormone driven. So it's, where do I get supports? How do I talk to my pediatrician about it? Do you have a care coordinator who you can say, maybe I need to get some therapy just to go through these teenage years? I have worked with patients just through their teenage years, from about 12 until about 19. And after that, they didn't need therapy anymore. Remember that therapy does not have to be lifelong. It can be used just to get through a particular period where you need supports. That's not necessarily medicine. Not saying that there's anything wrong with medicine, but you want to support it with both, where they have an opportunity to express themselves. And as we go through, we'll talk about those children who may not have verbal skills. So how do you support them? Chances are they're at that lower end of moderate to severe profound, and that's using pictures, that's understanding that this may be what they're thinking about. So it's, expression is through art, through art, through dancing, that frustration through the teenage years, finding those other social avenues to express their frustration. But using pictures can help them with, especially behavior modification. When you feel this way, here's where you go, right? When they have the need for sexual expression, that they know that, or easily redirected to a space where it's private. Okay, so are there any questions before I get into this, or do I get into questions on my sheet?
We do have one question right now, and that
Okay.
is, my two sons, 11 and 5, share a bedroom. How can I let them know they can have privacy while self-touch? Or how should I address this situation? Thank you.
Okay, awesome question. 11 and 5. So you may have them with self-touch at two different parts in their lives. Is there a way that you can create, for example, either a curtain? I'm not sure. Are they in a bunk bed or are they in two separate beds?
You can place your answer in the chat or in your Q&A follow-up, just so we have a better idea, whatever's easier.
If they're in a bunk bed, then it, of course, would be a little bit more difficult, but then you may want to talk about the bathroom. You may want to talk about somebody taking a bath, or while they're having a shower, or if one brother is in the room, then the other one could be in the bathroom. If they're in separate beds and it's possible to have some kind of curtain in between that they can, because they each need their privacy even within the room, that may be a good idea anyway to help them to understand privacy, and having something, a curtain they could pull apart, something that's fun, that when they do want privacy, because privacy is not only about self-touch. Growing up in a home where I was always in a room with a cousin or a sister, there were times when I just didn't want to see the other person. So having that curtain would also be great to just introduce the concept of privacy.
The parent just said it's two separate beds.
Okay, awesome. So that could be something, right? They can create what that curtain is, and it doesn't have to be about self-touch so that you're thinking, oh, I know what my brother is doing. But understanding that kids do need that time. They do need to have that private time. And this allows, again, as you're building autonomy, right? That concept of having autonomy. This is important that they can pull that curtain and practice having that privacy.
One of our parents just said, my son has a bed tent and it works for both regular beds and bunk beds. My boys are about the same ages and we have bunk beds.
Okay, so the bed tent, awesome. If it's bunk beds, again, I think it's the bathroom, the room, but think about that concept of privacy. That's not only during self-touch, and see, maybe is there another thing that could happen in the room? I know sometimes it's, in terms of space. Oh, I see someone, is that, so again, please look in the chat. I'm seeing someone putting Amazon, that's that bed tent privacy. Awesome, 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 awesome. Thank you for sharing. And that's the great thing about parents and parent groups, right? When parents come together, it is awesome, the information that you can share. So for parents who are on here, if you're not a part of a parent group, then please join a parent group, because you learn so much from each other.
One second, I'm trying to post the link that was shared with us. Oh, wow. That is so cool. I want one. There it is.
Okay. Awesome. Great. I hope that helped, if to the parent. giving them some ideas. Single bed can do either a bed tent or they can do just a curtain in between that, you know, both they can, whoever can just draw at any time when they just want quiet time. They want to read something, they want to, you know, the other child, the sibling doesn't want to. So it allows for privacy regardless of whether it's self-touch or not.
And any of our parents using the interpretation today, please feel free to place your question in the chat or the Q&A window in your native language in Spanish or Mandarin, and one of our interpreters will be sure to translate it. So feel free to please participate actively and share your questions. I believe
Okay.
we can go to that list, Connie.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go to the list. Some of you wrote in some questions.
And to our Facebookers, if you have any questions, please place them in the comments section. We'll be sure to monitor that as well.
Yes. Is there something in the chat before I go to the question?
One thing, we got it. Well, I think this is in regards to the bed tent. We got it for my autistic son's anxiety, but as he's gotten older, it's his little haven.
Awesome, because we all have that space we want to go to, right? So that's great. That is awesome, awesome, awesome. Where it's not punishment, because sometimes it's go to your room, but you want to have that space where you have that privacy. Okay, so let's go to our questions. I'm going to start with the nonverbal, right? How to deal with sexuality if your son does not talk. So again, your son may not be vocal. And I would ask, if the parent is on here, what age is the son and what aspect of sexuality? Is it about masturbation? Is it about privacy? What aspect, which one of those sections on that sexuality wheel is it? If it is masturbation, then it's about privacy. So it's about time and place. And it's more about, and when you're teaching privacy, it's great to use visuals for all types of disabilities. As long as someone has an intellectual disability, using pictures are extremely important. For children on the spectrum, they often see in pictures. So using pictures often are much more effective than just talking. So you want to take a picture of their bedroom, inside the bedroom, and even the door of their room. And that's the place. If that's, and that's what you're going to teach to, right? So when you want to touch yourself, if you want time for yourself, then that's where you go to teach where is private, not about the other places. So you're going to focus on what they should do. The law of displacement says when you increase the desired behavior, the undesired behavior automatically decreases. So you want to focus on where they should go and remind them. You may see things like, for someone who doesn't, a child who doesn't use words to communicate, do they get excited when they're watching certain shows? Or if they're touching themselves in public, when are they doing it? Remember, boredom, anxiety. Sometimes they need manipulatives. So maybe it's stress balls, or maybe it's one of the fidget toys or some kind of manipulative, because often that going back to, I touch it because it makes me feel good, often is driven by boredom or anxiety. Okay, so let's take another question. Where should we go? Let's look at reproductive rights and relationship goals. If we believe, so these are questions that I'm reading that were put in before. If we believe that a child will not have the capacity to care for a child of her own, how can we plan to avoid pregnancy?
That's a big question.
Yeah. I would ask, so with some of these questions, I'm going to be asking some questions. I'm going to be asking you back some questions. If you don't have a therapist, please seek a therapist. Some of these are not answers that you're just going to get, or questions you're just going to get an answer that's going to, you know, cover it all, because you may need more conversations, right? You may need, there are things that's going to come up. So again, I encourage you to get a therapist, Talk to the pediatrician. If you have a good pediatrician who understands that your child is a sexual being, a social sexual being. So I'm going to ask questions like, why do you think your child won't have the capacity to? Because there are supports in place. We have lots of people with IDD who are parents, and they get support, somebody coming in and supporting in different ways. We have people who are married, people who are single parents, but they have children, they live with their children, they've been taking care of their children, their kids are grown. We even have people who their kids are grown. So what is it that makes you think that the child would not be able to care for a child? The other thing would be, how have you explained it? I find a lot of times, because we are looking through the lens of the disability, we forget to talk about the practicality of things. Over the years, we've had people who have wanted to have kids, or it's because they love kids. They love to be around kids. And so we've done things like looking at how much diapers cost, look at what the cost of, even when you're pregnant and all the things you go through, the way your body changes, childbirth, looking at how much it costs with how much money they actually have. And for some children and for some young people, just going through the whole process helps them to understand responsibility. Just saying the word responsibility means nothing if you have nothing to connect it to. But when you make a list of everything that's going to be needed, when you talk about things like, you won't be able to just go from here to there as you want because you have a baby now. So babysitter, how much is that going to cost? You know, when you look at things like those and have those discussions, it often helps. There was one young woman who we started going through that process with her, and she said no. And that's because all her siblings were parents. And she said she changed her mind. And instead, what she did was volunteer in a daycare, because she was able to be around kids all the time. She was able to love on them and read to them and as much as possible, but now not, having kids of her own, but she made that choice herself. We gave her the information, and she realized that she wasn't up for that. It would take a lot of money, and the childbirth part, she didn't know about that. And then she chose to not have kids. Then we explored with her different types of birth control, not just told her what she had to take, but actually explored with her the different types. At her GYN visit, again, talked about the different types and side effects. So she's active in choosing what birth control she wanted to use. So one of the things I would absolutely say is to include the child as much as possible in that decision. We know kids from 5, when they're young, they say they want to have kids because we buy them dolls. So of course they're going to say, I want to be a mommy, because they've been mommying the dolls, right? So that's a natural progression. Many kids have said, when they're small, I want to be a mother, I want to have kids. There's nothing wrong with that. And then they're 30 years old and they still don't have any kids, but said that when they were smaller. So go with them where they're at, developmentally where they're at. If they're 10-year-old, then that's not the time to say, no, you're not going to have kids. Because a lot of 10-year-olds have dolls, especially if that 10-year-old child has dolls, right? It's having all the different discussions, the information behind the shopping. A 10-year-old, you're not going to tell. A neurotypical 10-year-old, we don't often say, no, you're not going to have kids. We just say they're kids, and we wait until they get older, right? At least puberty. So that's what I would suggest in that case. Multiple answers. Again, seek someone out who you can have further discussions with. I've worked with, as a therapist, I've worked with parents along this process, and in having that conversation, sometimes having joint sessions with the parent and the child, having certain conversations. So that's one great support to have as you're going through and helping to have the conversations. Let's see another one. What do you do when your autistic son wants a girlfriend really bad and the parent does not believe he's ready for one or mature enough? And he's 29 years old. Okay. So again, my question would be, what's that maturity? At 29 years old, he's an adult. He's actually able to have sex. He's over the age of 17. What is it that makes you think he's not mature enough? That's what I would say for you to explore. You know, sometimes we hold people with disabilities at higher standards than we hold ourselves. You know, I know some 50-year-olds who are not mature enough, I would think, to be in a relationship, but they are. They're married, they have kids. That's just my humble opinion. But what is mature enough? And that's what I would say to explore. What does that mean? And when is it and when he says he wants a girlfriend, what does that mean to him? It's important that you ask, what would you do with your girlfriend? A lot of times, and I teach this often, um, in my work at YAI with staff, with people we support, when they say I want a girlfriend, or they say I want a boyfriend, or I want a sweetheart, your next question is, what does that mean to you? What would you do? What is something that you and your boyfriend would do? I've had answers from my boy, my boyfriend text me. There's a young lady and she said, Connie, I have a boyfriend. I said, awesome. So what'd you guys do? Where'd you guys go? She said, he texted me. I said, okay. Um, and what else did you guys do? She said, Connie, he my boyfriend. He texts me. I said, all right, that's good. So you guys are texting and you're talking and what else? And with total exasperation, she said, Connie, I said he my boyfriend. He texts me. And then I got it. For her, having someone because think about what you see in right? What do you see people doing? Texting, talking on the phone. So for her, she had a boo who texted her, and that's okay for her. Right there, I said it, the last week, I have patients who've been together for years and have not had sexual intercourse. They've kissed, they hug, they have fondled, but they've never had actual intercourse of any type. Ask them what it means to them, and then you're better able to support. If it could be someone to just sit with, it could be someone to go places with. So definitely ask, what does that mean to them? And I'm a care manager and have a 40-year-old who seems determined on finding a girlfriend or wife. So I hope to gain info on how to speak to him about having a relationship. It starts out with helping him. And I think we have a site that we're going to show a little bit later, the autism initiative site, but how to be a friend. There are things like conversational skills. I've seen two people liking each other, sitting next to each other and greet each other. And then there's no conversation after that, because we have to teach them the art of conversation, what to talk about. There's something I've done with one of my patients on a key ring. And what we did was to create topics of conversation, sports, food, different things that she wanted, laminated it, put it on a key ring. She puts it in her pocketbook. So when she's on a date and she gets stuck, because here's where she would then get anxious, she starts getting nervous, she'd end up crying. She gets up, goes to the bathroom, and she looks on her key ring to remind her of topics to talk about. So for him in a relationship, where's he going to meet people? Maybe we need to getting him into more social situations, helping him to know what qualities he wants in someone, how to be a good friend, and then those pickup lines, right? What do you say to somebody who you're interested in? How do you ask for a phone number? These are things that often we forget that we need to teach, and these are things that create anxiety. If anyone has watched, there's a show that's called Love on the Spectrum. It's on Netflix. And it has lots of different episodes, and it shows people on the autism spectrum going out for dates. They're talking to dating coaches, and you're seeing different situations where people weren't comfortable, what worked, what didn't work. So Love on the Spectrum on Netflix is something to watch. There is another show that's called Born This Way. It had got quite a few awards. It is on Amazon Prime. It used to be on A&E. It has about 4 seasons, I believe. These are young people with Down syndrome. It's a reality type show, but it shows relationships, friendships. It talks about self-image. There's so many things that as parents, you can see from their world what that means. So 2 great shows to watch. So I hope that helped for the care manager. I'm an aunt for 8 beautiful children and a godmother to 1 child. I want to learn about teaching and supporting our kids' growth. And then I'm not a parent, but I want to learn more effective ways to educate and have conversations with young adults and children who are struggling with their sexuality and knowing that it's okay to be comfortable. I don't see the rest of this, but I see it in ally. So I'm guessing that it is
Comfortable in expressing who they are.
okay, great. Right. So that sense of self. We talked about disability pride and how important that is. Loving themselves, loving aspects about themselves, finding movies. And I had a slide. So if there's anybody here who was not on the training last week, I think it's okay. Is it okay, JC, to reach out to you to get a copy of that PowerPoint?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll include it automatically.
Yeah, so this way there's a list of movies that's there. It's important for children with intellectual disabilities to see people with disabilities doing things, dancing, modeling, print modeling, singing, acting. And there are people with disabilities doing those things. We just have to find them. Google it on YouTube. And so you can see positive images. Some movies are not really positive. On that list, I has all things that are positive. There's one on Vimeo called The Guest Room. So if you have Vimeo, it's called The Guest Room. That's also another great, when you talk about how do I even introduce the topic? Guest is pretty short, but and it's about a parent who has a son with Down syndrome and he has a girlfriend. And so the guest room is where they meet up. That's a great way to start a conversation about dating. At one point, she thought she was pregnant, and because they had the condom, but they got so excited they forgot the condom,
No.
you know. And then the next morning, just like, holy mess, there's the condom right there. It didn't actually get opened, which is real, right? But talk about how do I introduce the topic? This is a great little film. It's less than 30 minutes, or maybe about 30 minutes, the max. And it addresses birth control. It addresses being sexually consenting or just having sex. It addresses speaking up. There's so many things it addresses. It addresses being proud of who you are. It's just 30 minutes. So again, these are little things that you can use to start a conversation. When there's a family member who is pregnant, that's another time that you can start a conversation where that child is at. If there's a breakup, if there's a divorce, that's another space where you can talk about, what do you think you would do? Would you want to? So look for those opportunities where you can start a conversation that is not a let's have this sit down talk type thing, right? Because then that makes it more natural and a more natural flow.
Connie, we do have a question here from a parent. I'm looking for a social group for my 21-year-old autistic son. He can communicate well, but no social skills. I wish he could have some friends, especially some female friends. Do you have some recommendations?
Right. One of the biggest challenges with people with IDD, and I encourage parents to bombard the state with providing funding for social skills for young people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. I know that YI has a social skills group. So I would say YI Link would be the place to explore if they, one, if it's still happening, two, if it's full or they're opening anything up. I think the other thing is if you keep asking and they realize that they're having, you know, this is like the 10th thing we've heard, then maybe let's see if we can get someone in, right? It's all about the clinician. But I do know that there's social skills groups in the YI clinic. In Manhattan, and I think, Ben, you don't live in Manhattan, but this could be something that you could talk to your DDRO about, because the Manhattan DDRO has a grant called it's a family support grant. And in Manhattan, there is a program called the U&I program. And what it is, it's people with IDD coming together to learn social skills, to learn interactional skills, to learn sexuality education. However, it's only for people who live in Manhattan with parents. It meets once a month. We actually meet twice a month. I do know, I oversee that program, and we talk about everything. It's also a place where, again, you can meet people, right? But that's only for children who live in Manhattan over the age of 18 and above, live in Manhattan with family. But this is through, again, the Manhattan DDRO's office. For Queens and Brooklyn, here are requests that you can make to your DDRO office. We need a family support grant. We need a program in this borough that's going to be something you can tell them. I heard of the U&I program in Manhattan. We need to get that funding so that we can have it here in Queens, or you can have it in Brooklyn or in Long Island, right? Through the DDRO's office. I'm sorry, Ben, that's, you know, also check with JCC of Manhattan. I know that they have some groups. So that's another place you can check, but it's more that's needed. There's not enough.
Yes, and here at Synergia, we also have the integrated transition program. Unfortunately, the cutoff limit, it stops at 21, but it's something that we do provide because we realize that these spaces for this population and going through all of these questions and development, you know, they don't really exist. They're just not that readily available. So we do provide that space. But as I mentioned, it does stop at 21 years old. So yes, I would encourage you to do the same as Connie was saying. You know, write the legislature, and you know, and tell people, you know, like activate this and use that level of advocacy. And if you ever have any doubts on how to do that, we're here to help you do that as well. Whether it's giving you a draft of a letter or something that you can do, we're always happy to support you in doing that.
Okay, awesome. Because I think someone was asking about what is DDRO, so JC just said it. Contact JC. He can if not lead you to the right person, but in terms of the Manhattan, because I know meetings used to happen at Synergy at one time. But to find out who would be my Brooklyn DDRO person or my Queens DDRO person, and definitely reach out to them to say, hey, there's this program in Manhattan. I can't get in it because it's only for parents in Manhattan. We need this program in Brooklyn. We need this program in Queens.
And most of the disability development councils, there's one in each borough. And some of them, if not all of them, have a Facebook page. Don't hold that, but there is a Facebook page for some of them. So that might be also a good way to explore too.
Yep. And this, we just had elections, right? And we're going to be having more elections, and talking to your, you know, they've been calling, asking, what is the issue? Never heard of them, but they call and say, right, just before election time, hold them accountable, you know, but definitely going to the DDRO and saying, we need this for our young people. How are we to keep them out of trouble? How are we to get them this education? Education helps to prevent them being abused, them being taken advantage of. But how do they get taught? You cannot teach social skills in isolation. Social skills need to be taught in social situations. And so you need to absolutely have this.
Yes, we have a question. Where can we get more info on the U&I program?
By emailing me, connie.senior@yai.org. The process is when you email me, I will send you an application and you would send it back with the latest psychological, psychosocial, and life plan. Then I set up an interview. And that's basically, again, to see who the person is, meet them, see in terms of, just, getting an idea of knowing who this person is. And the age is 18 and above. They need to live in Manhattan with family, not on their own or with in a residence. They need to live with family. It's a great group, and we talk about, real skills. We just did sexual rights on last week when we met. We talked about sexual rights. What are those sexual rights? What I do love about it is that often parents are somewhere in the room. When we meet in person, we're in a room, and even if parents are there, they're in a separate room. So I know we were and talk about cultural issues, right? But really talking about their rights, their right to have privacy, their right to date, not at 30 or 40, because I've heard parents who will say that, oh, you're not, and then that young person says, oh, it's not time yet for me to date. You're 35, right? But I understand, I'm a parent, so I would say it ain't time yet, but it's not true, right? It comes from that fear that as parents, we have that fear. But remember that when they're saying relationship, when they're saying boyfriend or girlfriend, they may not always be thinking sex. They're thinking intimacy. They're thinking they have that need for that. Remember that love, that's not the parent love. There's the friend love, and then there's that special person love. And that sometimes could be all that they're talking about. And so it's finding out what that means, and then how do you support that? So connie.senior@yai.org for my
UNI.
email for the UNI program.
Mhm.
Yep, and reach out again to JCC about getting that help to speak to the DDROs, because it really is a great program. And I mean, we have no limits. We also do consent assessments in that group, because I oversee the group. So we also do, so I'm training to consent assessment, the information, and then consent assessments can also be done. When you receive services from YI, you do have the opportunity to get consent assessments done. Okay. Are there any other questions? Wherever I go on, but awesome. This is wonderful. Or please remind me of when it's time for a break, JC, because I'll talk forever.
I sure will.
Okay. Tips I see on sex talk, tips on sex talk. I would like to learn how to talk about sex to my son and what needs to be shared. So at it, I see 11-year-old, 15-year-old, and 8-year-old. I would like to learn how to talk about sex to my son. Is this a mom? Is this a mom? May not be the person he wants to hear from. But maybe, right? How close are you? I think it starts from, and on the PowerPoint, I had a slide that had some questions. What do I know now? What do I need to know? What does my child need to know? Right? It's always easy to use incidental moments to start that conversation. And conversation doesn't always have to be at one point. So what aspect of sex are we talking about, right? Remember that sexuality wheel? What aspect? So where is it that you're going into the talk about sexuality? And remember that sexuality, you develop your sexuality. Sexuality is from womb to tomb. There is no, oh, now I'm totally sexual. Nope. It develops and changes as you go through life, right? You're always developing it. The key is not to suppress it. The key is not to suppress the development of your child's sexuality, but understand that it's going to be a discussion throughout life. So where do I start? What is your child interested in? What's going on? Is it a body thing? Is it because there are changes in the body? Is it because they're starting to, maybe you look on the computer search history and you're seeing things like breasts and and or boobs. And that's how one parent found out, because she was seeing, she went into the search history and she saw breast spelled incorrectly. So she said, then I know it's my son, it's not my husband, because my husband knows how to spell breast. So that's how she knew her son was looking, was Googling breasts. So depending on what you're seeing, then that's where I would start. I wouldn't, and again, only give in pieces, right? What they need at that time. What are they asking? When you go in to have the talk, ask them already. So what do you know? So, tell me what you know, and then I'll just add to it, because I know that you're great, you're on your tablet or whatever it is, and I'm sure you got some information. Maybe your friends told you some stuff. So let me know, tell me what you know, and then I'll just see what I need to add to it. Because remember, the conversation, you want to have it in a way that's not shaming. You want to have it in a way where it's not suggesting that it's a bad thing. You want to have it in a way that's still going to leave the child empowered, but still with a door open to come back and continue that conversation. Also remember that if you're not comfortable, because maybe you're not, then your responsibility is to make sure there is someone that the child is comfortable going to, because they're going to get the information.
One way or another.
One way or another, they're going to get it. So you just want to make sure that they're getting the correct information.
And, and just to add to that, maybe role play with somebody and, like try and see, because, you as the parent know your child best. You know how they're going to respond. You know the types of how they're angling when they do ask questions. So you kind of already have an insight into how their mind is thinking. But practice with somebody and say, this is how my son is, or this is how my daughter is. And that might help you just kind of practice a little bit, and shake off some of those butterflies, that we have, because it's a difficult conversation, especially when you're first having it. It's one of those first times, so maybe practice that way. But yeah, and remember that I've heard a parent recently say, oh, well, I'm a female, I can't tell my son anything about this. That doesn't stop you.
Not at all. My son, even today, my son would, because he grew up in a household where, and nobody had a sex talk with me, but I had the talk with my daughter, and he's nosy. He's 8 years younger, and he likes to be involved in everything. And I said, fine, Mr. Nosy, come right over here and sit down. So he got it way earlier than he probably should have. So I blame him. But it allowed him to be comfortable. And then I always had visual aids, and he's always being nosy in bags. So he's in the Navy now. He's a Navy man. And just a couple of weeks ago, he said, Mommy, I should really be scarred. I said, are you scarred? He said, no, but I can just talk to people. And he's done that throughout his high school and college years, where he would just call me up, Mommy, my friend needs to talk to you. Because right, he was able to have that open conversation. It's so important that, or a family member, a co-worker said, Connie, I'm going to talk, this is what I saw with my son, how do I say it? So you don't have to know how to say it, but being able to connect to someone who can talk you through it, maybe your doctor, like I said, maybe a therapist. Maybe it's just sending an email. Send me an email. I have no problem with you sending me an email and saying, Connie, oh my gosh, this is what happened. I don't know. Do you have some tips? Totally fine, right? Any resource I have, I believe in visuals, like I said. So I collect a lot of visuals to talk about stuff. I'll tell you the last coolest one, because they're always cool. Like, oh, cool, was how do males suppress or cover an erection? So like you're sitting in the bus, and maybe, especially teenagers, right? They may look up, see a beautiful woman, and without them even thinking, they get an erection. And so I researched it and I found visuals of different ways that you can cover an erection. Isn't that cool? So you never know what's out there. Um, Please feel free to email me if stuff like that comes up and you have no idea. But again, utilize your therapist, speak to your care coordinator about finding any kind of social skills classes. You do have to look for them. And then we're going to go to a website where that's another good place to find some information. And in the PowerPoint, I also have other things that you can look at. There were a few other resources there to look at.
Yes.
If you can purchase Sexually Speaking is a DVD that YI sells. It's called Sexually Speaking. All the actors are people with disabilities, and it actually goes through the areas of for knowledge that's needed for a consent assessment. So whether you do the assessment or not, and let me touch a little bit on the consent assessment. Do I have time before we go to a break, or should I wait until I come back from a break?
No, 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 go ahead.
Okay, so in terms of consent assessment, remember that it's knowledge, right? So a consent assessment really is assessing knowledge. So what you should do is to ensure that your child is getting the knowledge when the consent is, so that if one is done, they already have that knowledge. They don't have to know everything. I shared in the PowerPoint the areas. There are 5 main areas that the state looks at, and those are the 5 same areas that the YI tool is about. And the video covers those 5 areas. Because here's what is important. If something happens, God forbid, even if your child is living on their own, once the police are questioning, because they're going to have to do investigation, if that child is now not speaking because of the trauma, if it's a child who again may have ADHD as well as autism, as well as IDD, and so their thoughts may wander, that police officer may say that person is automatically not consenting. Not because they're checked for knowledge, but because they see something and they aren't necessarily trained. So they'll say that person is not consenting. What that means is that that person who was abused, even though they can point to their abuser, will not be swearable in court. The Brooklyn District Attorney's Office have a program called Project Shield. So any sexual crime where there's a person with an intellectual disability or kind of intimate partner violence or anything, they would then contact Project Shield. And if there's a question of consent, then they're going to contact YI, and I'm the person who is the contact person at YI. And I go in and I do a consent assessment. That is important because if that person is deemed not consenting, the onus goes on the investigation. So now they have to find a camera. They're going to may have to, did something come from the rape kit? They have to find corroborating evidence to go to court. It's very, very, very important. So I'm encouraging all parents, even if you don't do a consent assessment, get the education so your child can have the information. So that if a situation like that comes up and they say they're assessing for consent, they will then be found consenting at that point. There was a young woman who lived on her own. Actually, she was 60 years old, sprightly young woman, young woman, and she lived on her own. She had a panic button. Because here's the other thing about stranger and acquaintance, right? Who's a friend? She lives in an apartment complex, and there's this young man who would be around the complex. So do you think she sees that person as a stranger? No. Even though that's not a friend, she doesn't have the phone number, they haven't really had a conversation, but she's seen him a couple of times around the complex. Something was wrong with her cable. So she opens the door. I guess she had called for somebody in the building. She opens her door and she sees him in the hallway. So she calls him to say if he could help. Remember, she's seen him around the complex. Remember that Who is that stranger and who is that friend? These are things that need to be taught. He comes in and he raped her, as well as went in her refrigerator and took her drink out and took a bunch of other things that she didn't want him to take. When he left, she pressed the panic button. Cops came, right? She did what she was taught to do. When the cops interviewed her, the cops said she was not consenting. Why? Because her thoughts, right? She's constantly going, it's like she'd be saying, yeah, JC, so today, but yesterday was such a nice day, JC, and I had a nice thing to drink. And then you ask a question and she may answer it, and then she goes off to something else. We know that that doesn't mean she's not consenting. But to the police officers, because she had those fleeting thoughts, they automatically said she's not consenting. It went to the Project Shield, and I was called in to do an assessment. Now, here's another key thing to remember. They did a lineup. It was a virtual lineup. She did not pick him out of the lineup. That's a possibility. We don't know how good the picture was. There's some people who can't match things with pictures because we're talking about a cognitive deficit. So one, she was consenting. When I spoke to her and she was, and certain times she would cry. So I knew from talking to her that there was something traumatic that happened. And she said no, and all of that other stuff. And content-wise, she was consenting. What helped was they saw him leaving her apartment on camera, and the rape kit. I think this was one where the rape kit, when they did the rape kit, there was a hit. The DNA connected to him, and that they saw him. So it was a tight case. But she didn't go in court to testify because of how emotional she was. They allowed for her to do a one-on-one with the judge. So she could talk to the judge one-on-one instead of going into grand jury. But again, here's the thing. She didn't pick him up out of a lineup. That is possible. The whole thing was that she wasn't consenting. But when I spoke to her and did that assessment, she was consenting. She lives on her own. So just because someone lives on their own does not automatically mean that the police is going to think that they're consenting. What is the age for a child to get this assessment? You really don't need it until past the age of 17, because anything under 17 is automatically not consenting. The age of consent for New York is 17. So over 17. But before you do an assessment, get information, get education, teach to things like what actually is sex, name of the body parts, what to do if someone touches you. There's one assessment that I did with the district attorney's office, and she kept pointing. So I said, I see you pointing. What are you pointing to? And she gave the street name for the vulva. And I said, oh, great, right? I didn't say, oh, no, don't say that. That's vulgar. No, I said, oh, great. It's also called, right? Because pointing is not evidence. She needs to say it. Or I usually have pictures as well. And I'll say, so show me what happened. Or if I, on the assessment, it will say, if I say two people are having sex, what does that mean? Because sex doesn't automatically mean a penis into a vagina, right? Sometimes that's what we think, but that's not the case, right? There are other types of sex. So it's that teaching. If body parts, different types of sex, because we know high school kids, neurotypical high school kids for many years thought that oral sex was not sex. It is sex. And that's when we had that high rate of gonorrhea of the throat and a lot of other stuff. And that's still forcing. What's forcing? What do you do if somebody is touching you and you don't want them to? We need to teach them to say no, get up and go tell someone, not just say no. I've had patients who will say no, but they stay right there with that potential abuser. No, say no loudly, get up and tell someone. This thing about inside voice and outside voice, we really need to stop doing. And whenever I talk to parents, I talk about that. Because if you're inside and there's a fire And we have taught them that if they're inside, they're supposed to use their inside voice. So there's a fire, I need help becomes, I need help.
Mm.
I need help, not a scream. Right? So there's certain blanket statements that we use that we really should not be using anymore because it confuses kids and it confuses people with IDD. So whenever I teach about, if someone touches you, and I don't say just touch your genitals, your entire body is private. Most predators don't start by touching your genitals. They start by touching your hair, by holding your hand, by giving you a compliment. So anytime that someone touches your body without asking permission, but then you need to be taught, and this is from children, so as young as possible, someone needs to ask you before they touch you. So as adults, we should be asking, can I get a hug? Even to your own child. Not just grab them and hug them. Because when you are doing that, you're modeling for them what other people should do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I say that to my grandson. I say, can grandma get a hug? And then I say to him, if you don't feel like hugging at this time, it's also okay. Because we need to teach kids how to non-comply. If we don't teach them how to say no respectfully to an adult, then how do we expect them to say no to that adult who is abusing them? Or that adult who touches, because it's that first touch. It's that first touch that we got to think about. That first touch, they need to be able to tell someone. If it's gone on to the fourth, fifth, sixth touch, then they're already in that space where that abuser will say, don't tell mommy, because if you tell mommy, mommy's going to be hurt. Mommy's going to be disappointed in you, right? It's all that stuff that the perpetrators say. So that first touch, they need to tell someone. And that it's okay to say no, right? When we even talk about privacy, I'm not always in the mood to see people, talk to people. I'm not always in that mood, right? So we got to understand kids are also not always in that mood, right? It's never okay to be disrespectful, but then it's for us to teach them how to respectfully say no.
I think, Connie, also one thing that you mentioned last week was the importance of not forcing your child to show affection to family members.
Yes.
Because,
yes.
and just it really came to mind right now in what you were saying, knowing that, often perpetrators are people that we know, and people that we know are keeping close circles are usually family. So yeah, that really came to mind.
Absolutely. I'm doing therapy right now with a 54-year-old man who is still dealing with issues around a family friend or family, I think maybe a family friend, I'm not sure if it's a family member, who made him masturbate him when he was a child. He's 54. I'm still working with him, and I just started working with him in December of last year. And it was only about a month ago that I was able to even bring that topic up, right? 54. So it's so important. And I know culturally, because I come from that culture, right? I'm Jamaican by birth. You do not even make eye contact with an adult because that's disrespectful. You don't do that. That's being rude and brazen, right? That's my culture. You're not in the room when certain topics are being discussed. Children leave the room, right? That's the culture I was brought up in. So I understand the culture. And what we really need to do is to help children to know other ways of greeting, right? They walk in a room, they are supposed to say hello, say good evening, they wave, they can do the elbow thing, they can do a fist bump, have choices, but not, as you said, JC, not to force them to hug, because hugging is having someone in their personal space. Children have personal space just like adults, and we need to teach them as early as possible, right, that they have personal space and somebody else has personal space. Because then often we find, even in like day programs, you have people they're going into someone's personal space, but they won't get it if they don't understand it for themselves, right? So let's start teaching them that their entire body is private. people need to ask them before they touch them, even doctors. There's an incident where a person with an IDD went to I think it was the foot doctor, the podiatrist, and went into the room, sat on the bed and started taking his clothes off. Because that's what he does most of the time when he goes for a physical. So to him, he goes to the doctor, there's a bed, he sits on it, he takes his clothes off when it wasn't necessary, right? We forget about the things that they learn and don't realize that there's some things that we consciously need to teach. Okay, did we answer all the consent?
I think we have.
Right, I think I did say the body parts, knowing the different types of sex, knowing what is sex, all the things that constitute sexual contact, not sex, sexual contact, right? Because often in our heads, when you think sex, we see two people kissing and we automatically think sex. Oh, yep, they're gonna do it. Not the case, right? So what actually sexual contact, birth control, what can they do to prevent pregnancy and prevent STIs? Knowing that condom is is the way to prevent STIs. If they're sick, right? So if they're sick in the genitals, right? Because it's if it's burning, if it's hurting, if it's whatever, something is going on down there, they need to see a doctor, they need to speak to a nurse. Forcing, of course, is very important. Public things that are illegal is information they need to know. So exposing yourself in public is illegal. Having sex in public is illegal, in a car, in the park, in the roof, because they see especially young people, they see these in movies, right? You see it in all these reality shows, people having sex in the pool, by the pool, on the roof, in the something. If they're not getting that information, the correct information from somewhere, they're going to think that that's okay, and it's not okay. So you want to be teaching, legal versus illegal. I think it was the foot doctor, the podiatrist, and went into the room, sat on the bed and started taking it where they're going to think that that's okay, and it's not okay. So you want to be teaching, legal versus illegal. I think it was the foot doctor, the podiatrist, and, legal. What happened? What happened? The recording just replayed?
Sorry about
What
that.
happened?
I was
The recording
responding.
just
We
replayed?
Sorry about
What
that.
happened? The recording just
There we go.
replayed?
Sorry about
What
that.
happened? The recording just maybe this is a good time to take that 10-minute break so we can figure out what's happening.
Yes, we're going to take a 5-minute break,
Got it.
everybody. We do have a question on Facebook that I want to acknowledge, and that's what I
Oh,
was
sure.
trying to do. Before we take the break, I want to ask this question on behalf of our parent. Let me find it. Hopefully it won't play the video. Good. Yes. So there are difficulties when you have a child that has cognitive and physical delays. How do you address this topic with them?
What age is the child?
I'm waiting.
While we're waiting to get the age of the child, we often think that people with physical disabilities can't have sex, and they can. They are adaptive. They're even adaptive equipment.
Facebook, but I want to acknowledge. Oh my goodness.
Can't have.
It won't stop playing. Still waiting for that. I tell you what, let's take that break and hopefully we can get the age of the child. To our Facebooker who's asking about how to address this topic with the child with cognitive and physical delays, please let us know what the age is And I'm going to try and respond directly without interrupting the feed on here. We're going to take a 5-minute break, give our interpreters a chance to rest and everybody to get some coffee or you take a bathroom break really quick, but we'll be right back. Thank you. Okay, well, that was a nice break. I love that song. All
Yeah.
right. Oh, time's up. Okay. All right. So we're back. Thanks everybody, and hopefully our interpreters are feel better. I've been an interpreter before, and yeah, a break is always much needed. Let's see what we have on Facebook. We don't have an answer on that age, so
Okay. Okay. So what I can say is for, again, depending on what topic it is. So when we talk about introduction, if it's puberty, right? Remember, you want to start the talk about puberty before puberty so they can be prepared for puberty. Even things like, hygiene becomes an issue during puberty, right? Because we know it's about hormones. So start talking about that. Start looking at deodorants for many children on the spectrum who have sensory issues. Is it a roll-on? Is it a spray? Is it one of those solid things? What do they want, one with no scent? Do they want one with? So all of these, because then what you do is it's two things. You're preparing them for using it and why it's important to use it. And then it also where they're involved. So it makes it more fun. And because I know a lot of times with parents, those teenage years, bathing, showering, brushing teeth, using deodorant and stuff is challenging. And sometimes it's because I didn't have to do it before. Why do I have to do it now? So they don't understand the why behind. In that PowerPoint as well, I also had slides and it showed the progression from a child to an adult. So it shows how the body changes. That's a great concrete way to talk about the different changes. And, when this starts happening, let's talk about it. And what does that mean? Things like buying the first like training bra, making those things special. You can make puberty into a special thing because it can be scary. It's hush hush. Again, if you're not comfortable doing it, is there an auntie? Is there an uncle? Is there someone a trusted person in the family who could lead that discussion? But preparing for puberty is important. So for a child who also has physical challenges, understand that they are adaptive equipment, right? When it comes to self-esteem, again, it's so important that they're seeing they are dance troops for people with physical disabilities, cerebral palsy, and other physical disabilities. They are, so they're dancers, they're actors, they're, again, in all different genre and parts of industry that is important for them to see, musicians, drummers, you know, in America, outside of America, that you're bringing those examples to a child or to your child. They have adaptive equipment, not equipment, more so toys that can help if someone is wanting to masturbate and they don't have, the fine motor skills or dexterity in their fingers. They are tools that they can use. They're toys that they can use. Again, it's this tool, speaking to a therapist who can help you or someone who can help you. Um, Email me and say it's something that you're looking for. Maybe depending on what the situation is, I could maybe make some suggestions a little bit better because I would need to know some more things. But remember that self-esteem is huge, but just because someone has a physical disability does not mean that they don't still want to love and be loved, or they don't still want intimacy, or that they can't have intimacy. There are lots of stories of adults with spinal cord injury where their doctors never, spoke to them about any kind of birth control. I was just speaking to this woman who has dwarfism, and she said when she had her first child, she has two children, I think, maybe three. And when she had her first child, the doctors, while they were delivering, asked if she wants them to just tie her tubes. Like what? Like
Mm.
what? And this was what, 6 years ago? So it's again, the thought is there that people with disabilities in general are not sexual beings. So The physical disability really hasn't anything major to do with it, except may be needing supports, maybe supports their organizations who support in positioning. So it may be even when they are sexually active with being in certain positions, depending on who they're with, but these are all supports that can be had. Some key foundational things is emotionally where they at, that body image. Remember that if someone has a wheelchair or they use a walker, anything like that, that walker or wheelchair helps them in their mobility. So it becomes a part of them. So if they want to decorate it, they want to, bedazzle it, tells you my age, bedazzle is probably not the word. But if they want to funkify it, however they want to individualize it, encourage that, because it becomes a part of who they are as a person, not that external thing that makes them look less than or not fit in. And helping them to own it. Disability is not a bad word. Disability, and in the disability field in general, people are, just like erase the R word, or there's the concept with queer, where queer used to have a negative connotation, where for younger generations, they're taking back, and that was the campaign. We're taking back the word queer and we're making it into a positive thing. It's the same concept with disability, where there are many who are saying we're taking back that word disability. It is not a bad thing. It is not a negative thing. It is a part of who I am. It is a part of my identity, and it's me. Me, it's a part of me, just like my hair color is a part of me. So so in terms of that self-pride and that self-esteem, it's important, but the conversations are going to be the same, and it's building that self-confidence, knowing this is who I am. Even though I may not be, and I shared a pride page in that PowerPoint as well, where that's something that's going to help. So I'm not able to do this, but I can do this really good, right? What are the strengths? Help them to identify those strengths, know those strengths, build on those strengths as they continue to work on areas where they may need supports. So I hope that answers the parent about having a child with a cognitive disability as well as a physical disability. I think we could go to the site, JC.
Okay. Let's see.
Oh, we have those too. So I do want to do that, as well as the questions and the query, the gingerbread person.
Oh, right. Let's see. Bear with me 1 second.
That's okay. It's again, a key is using those incidental moments when things come up. It could be something like watching an award show, right? And you notice, I was in one parent workshop. One parent had said, I do notice when a certain news person come on, they notice their son smiling a lot, kind of blushing, wouldn't have the conversation. So, and that's what I said, notice what's happening. And when it happens, be like, oh, she's beautiful, isn't she? And that's what I said to him. I said, the next time you notice it, you validate it, oh, that's beautiful. She's beautiful, isn't she? What do you like about her? Talk about her here. What does he like? But making it taboo is not going to help with them talking about it, right? So seize those moments, give that information at that moment. You don't have to give the whole spiel, but what you're doing is opening that door a little bit more each time so they can talk to you about other things. Right. So if we go to who we are. Okay, so the next one, how we help self-advocates.
Yes.
And then the sex ed.
And we've been highlighting this on our website, each one of these. There are 9 parts to this throughout the last 2 months.
Awesome. And of course, the videos, so listening to the recordings are always great as well, because that's a conversation. You can start questions with that. But this is great for you as the parent to look at, but also something you can look at with your child if they're cognitively able to. even if it's just pictures, or for some people, it's for them to go on and look at it themselves. There's nothing you can do. They can go on, look at it themselves, and then they can come to you with questions. Another is Amaze in YouTube. They have lots of different topics in Amaze in YouTube. So, okay, so you went to public versus private.
But look at all this stuff they have on here. So
Yep.
they explain it in such great detail, and then even more examples.
And because let's stop here a little bit. So what are some behaviors that are okay to do in public places? So it's good, right? Because this is what you want to focus on. What is okay? You see that there is something they're doing that's not okay. And sometimes we focus on, let's talk about this part that's not okay. But then that's what's already there. We want to replace what's there with what they're supposed to do. So let's give them what they're supposed to do and encourage them to practice what they're supposed to do. And then, right, law of displacement. When you increase the desired behavior, the undesired automatically is reduced. I love this because it talks about tone of voice and words used. And often with some people on the autism spectrum, this is something in terms of voice modulation, right? That needs to be discussed about. A key thing to remember, social skills need to be taught by location and occasion. Social skills need to be taught by location and occasion. The social skills needed in a restaurant is not exactly the same social skills needed in the movie theater, right? It's different. So there isn't a one thing that covers everywhere. The social distance. So let's say that coronavirus is over and we're back to standing in line like we regularly do. The distance that you would stand, that you would allow between you and the person in front of you at the supermarket check-in is not the same distance that you would allow at the ATM. It's different. In the supermarket line, you don't want to leave too much space ahead of you because somebody's going to cut you in front of you, right? There's too much space. They're going to think that, you're not ready. You're not online. Sometimes they'll think that. So you need to be closer to the person in front of you. At the ATM, you don't want anybody who's right behind you. You're going to say, can you back up, please? Right? So social skills need to be taught by location and occasion. There's not a blanket way. In each space that you go into, think about the social skill that's needed in that place. And that's what you want to teach and reinforce. In fact, before you even go, that's something that you teach. For our people we support who live in residences, things like going to a strip club. It is not illegal to go into a strip club. It is not illegal to look at porn. It's illegal to buy a prostitute in New York City, right? But it's not illegal. But what we also do is we teach what's the social skill in a strip club. You can't touch the person. So we teach all of this. So when they go into the strip club, they're not doing something that's going to get them kicked out. Can we go back down to that one? Even though this is in a locker room, right? But I want to talk about bathrooms here because often we don't do that. There's a different social etiquette for people going into male-bodied bathrooms or female bathrooms. Now, when it's together, it's going to probably be more like a female bathroom. You often see females. So I'm going to use the term females and males to identify female and male bodies, right? So you going together, often you find females getting ready to go to the bathroom and they'll say, hey, I'm going to the bathroom. Do you want to come? Because we go in groups. We're social beings. And in the bathroom, we talk, we compare notes, especially if we're on a date. We take pictures, we compliment each other, we fix our makeup, but it's a whole social environment. In male bathrooms, I am positive it is not the same thing. They're not gathering in there taking photos to put on social media. They're not talking about where they got their shoes or their shirts. They're not having all this conversation by the urinals. So it's important that we teach these social skills even in these public places. things like where there's a urinal, you don't drop your pants to the floor. Young people do it at home. You drop your pants to the floor, you may sit on the toilet, but for a urinal, you don't drop your pants to the floor, which means then you need to then teach your son or have someone teach your son how to pee standing up. Because when they're kids, many times they're taught to sit. In the residences, often they're sitting in the bathroom sometimes. But when you go out in public, in a public space where there are multiple urinals, what has happened over the years? There are people because in a urinal, right? I learned this because I'm a mother. I've never been in a men's bathroom. You know, I have a son and I often wonder, how did he learn? But he picked it up. When you go into the urinal, you do not go, and correct me if I'm wrong, JC, if someone is standing here, you don't go to the one next to the person. You go to the furthest one, right? But who teaches this? Right? You have someone who's working on social skills. So when they meet someone, they're supposed to say hello. That's possible in the female bathroom. We meet people and get phone numbers and everything. But in a male bathroom, when someone comes in and they're greeting you and want to shake your hand, right? I see JC face like, huh?
What?
Yes. But so we've had people with IDD who, because that's what they're working on, and no one has taught them that when you go in the bathroom, you're going in, you're going to go in, do what you got to do, wash your hands and come out. That's not a place for socialization. We've had people who have been beat up. We've had people where people thought that they were pedophiles because they dropped their pants to the floor. So they must be, look, especially if there are kids in there, younger people in there. So please, 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 these are also things that need to be taught. So there are things we don't even think about. We expect them to pick it up, but especially for children on the spectrum, we know these are gray areas for them. Picking up social cues is an area of challenge for them. So when you think about all the things that you know in certain places, these are things we need to teach.
Did you want to show the Amaze video?
I wanted to go just to another topic before the Amaze
Sure,
video,
sure.
because this one was public versus private.
So this is the depth that they go on each of these topics, and it's a really great tool to use. And then it also has a conclusion video, and then you have the opportunity to test what you've learned, whether it's you or the self advocate. You also have that. Let's see. All right, which one, Connie?
How about dating 101? Right? So here, things like crushes, flirt, how to flirt. They're talking about flirting, asking people on dates, going on a first date, right? I know one of the questions was about, how do I even start this conversation? This may be a place to start that conversation, you know, asking, you know, what do you know about dating? What do you want to do when you say you want a girlfriend? What does that mean? What are things that you would want to learn? Is to do with your girlfriend or your sweetheart? Right? How do I flirt? Asking someone out, I see on the left. Handling rejection is also huge, 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 huge. How to handle rejection is something we don't talk about a lot. It is a natural thing that happens. In the UNI group, we've had, you know, a lot of conversations about it. And often what they have said is they end up thinking that it's because they have a disability that they were rejected, which is not always the case, right? Plus they need the skills. So lots of these topics. This is a great site. If we could maybe go back up to the top, JC, or maybe put that in the chat as well so people can see the URL. It's also in the PowerPoint.
Yes.
So that this is also in the PowerPoint in terms of being able to access this information. Again, right, we believe in free. So this is on the internet, and the internet is not all bad, right? It's just where they go on the internet. So these are, you know, some good things to do on the internet. So Amaze is also a great, it's a company that makes lots of different videos. So we'll quickly watch this one, but once you put it into your YouTube, you're going to see a lot of other ones. And it talks about everything from having the conversation. Is there, my body is changing? Is there, so these again, and little clips, right? They're usually like 3 minutes long, but here's again, starting that conversation. How do I start the conversation? They can watch it, they can come to you, you can
All
do
right,
it together.
folks, here we go. A romaine and kale salad with avocado, cucumber, shishito peppers, and 4 kinds of cheese. Sprinkled in balsamic straight from Italy.
Wow. In my day, salads only had 2 ingredients: a rock hard wedge of iceberg lettuce and a stinky old dried up tomato.
Sorry, guys. I'm gonna have to eat fast. Alex is stopping by in a few minutes to work on our robotics project.
Alex, is that the girl with that weird dog or the boy with the hat with the wings that flap?
No, Uncle Jay. This is Alex.
Oh, okay. I remember. A very nice young, come to think of it, well, is Alex a boy or a girl?
Actually, Alex doesn't define themselves as boy or girl.
What else is there?
Back in your day, most people understood the world in terms of just boys and girls. But now we know gender is more complex than that.
Wait, aren't we just talking about whether you're born with a or a
When you're born, your sex is assigned in a medical way, but the sex listed on your birth certificate may not necessarily match your gender identity.
Gender identity is a person's inner experience of who they are in terms of gender, their deep personal sense of being male, female, a blend of both, or neither.
And while many people have a gender identity that's the same as their assigned birth sex of female or male, that's not always the case because gender exists on a spectrum. Like transgender, which means a person whose gender identity is not consistent with their assigned birth sex. Non-binary, which means a person whose identity doesn't fall in the category of either male or female. And genderqueer or gender fluid, which means a person who does not identify themselves as having a specific gender at all.
Does gender identity have to do with being straight or gay?
Actually, no. Gender identity has to do with the way you feel about yourself, while sexual orientation is based on the way you feel toward others, the people you may or may not be attracted to.
You know, I really like Alex, and I can tell they're a good friend to you, but I'm still pretty confused about all of this.
That's okay. You don't have to fully understand someone to respect them. To start, try not to make any assumptions about a person's gender and use the name and pronouns that they ask you to. Above all, be a friend or ally for people of all gender identities.
That's right, Mom. Oh, Alex is here. Come on in.
Hey, everyone.
Oh, hey, Alex. Care for some salad? The balsamic's right from Italy, you know.
JC, I don't know if you could like maybe just put a maze in to kind of see what else is there. Could-
Sure.
Right, so they're the pronouns. Is it okay to shave your vulva? Like, right, think about topics like those. Period in 3rd period, so it talks about the menses. Is it behavior or attraction? Porn is not sex education, right? Look at these different topics. Again, great things for you to watch. So I think on one of the things we had, right, education for you as a parent, you can watch it first and get some information, and then you can then talk about it. SDI talks about what is abstinence, because that's also key. Abstinence, there's nothing wrong with abstinence, and there's nothing wrong with anyone if they choose to be abstinent. The key is you want it to be a choice of theirs, not something that's forced on them, right? Loving yourself and others. Tips for safer sex and pregnancy prevention, right? Look at talking with your parents about that. Ooh. Can you break a boner? That one is also a really fun one. Can I break a boner? So some great topics. Can anyone get an erection? Here's a young person who, you know, first realizing or having an erection. So some really, really great topics. How often can a person masturbate? Can it be too much? Right? So watching it first to educate yourself, and then you can have that discussion, maybe show that video. Sometimes it opens up other stuff. So this again is another real good,
It's a great resource.
great resource that can start a conversation, that can support a conversation. They can watch it on their own, on their phones if they want, right? They can have their phone, go on YouTube, watch it, and then come to you and ask a question, or to that person. Or here's another thing, have them watch it, think of the question before they go to the pediatrician, right? So you're empowering them to already start asking social sexual questions to their doctor, but you're allowing them to get some information first, some facts first, and then helping them to, to discuss that with a pediatrician or with their gynecologist. So great topics.
Wow. I'm going to be here a bit.
Yeah, it's a lot, and it's good. That menstruation sensation is also a really good one too, because here's what we often don't do with children, is talk about things like PMS, cramping, right? So what we see is the behavior representing something is going on. And remember, if you're a young person, you don't know what these feelings are. You just know that you're moody, you don't want to talk to anybody, you now want to eat chocolate or ice cream or a bunch of carbs, but they go through those same exact things too. So it's helping to understand that these are things that may happen. There's a young woman who doesn't use words to communicate. How her mother knows is that she's taught her where the ice pack is in the fridge. So whenever she's getting cramps, she actually just goes for it. But they had to have that conversation about pain, because pain in your foot is still pain. Same sign language sign for pain, right? Pain. So if there's pain anywhere, she indicates to her mother. But what she also did was say, whenever it's in your tummy and she around her menses, she just goes for the ice pack. So this again is, and I see there's some in Spanish. Did you see the one in Spanish? The
Ooh.
amazing Spanish. There's the,
There you go.
yeah, so there are a few, yeah.
Masturbación. ¿Qué es la orientación sexual? Oh, these are great.
Right, so again, wonderful.
La pubertad de las chicas. Yes. That's a great resource.
Awesome.
I just loved it for the gender identity video. With that,
Yeah, there's a bunch. I've used them. And some of these are what I use it also in UNI, because it's easy to just show a clip and then have a whole discussion. We break out in small groups and have even more, intimate discussions about it.
And then we wanted to show you guys this this tool.
Yep. In helping, yeah, go ahead, JC.
No, go ahead.
Right, and just helping to understand, right? We know it's going to take time, and I think the piece about this is to understand that a lot of times with young people, they're asking questions that you yourself may be asking. It's okay to learn together. The key is to have that atmosphere of let's learn together, not shame, not bad, not any of those things. But you know what? And be okay to say, I'm not sure, let's learn together. It's a great place. I know there was one parent who had a niece or someone who was questioning, but here is a way to look at gender identity, different from gender expression, different from sexual attraction, different from romantic attraction. And what JC is doing is he's showing that there's a spectrum. How much do you believe that you are 100% woman, or am I somewhere along that? Or does it mean that the days when I don't feel like really liking being female, does it mean that I need to switch? Right, there are all these different topics. But understanding that there are spectrums and you can be anywhere along the spectrum. But this again is a great way to look at what's the difference between all these terms again.
And here
very interactive. What did you do? What happened to the?
Oh no, they have it for kids too. So that was the adults, the one.
Oh,
this is the kids one.
Right, because there isn't the sexual piece. Right, again, a great interactive that you can talk about. The definitions are right there. Let's look at it together. Let's talk about it, right? Attraction, who you like or get crushes on, right? So that's cool. That's not saying who you're going to have sex with, because at that point it's probably not, they're not thinking sex, right? It's who I like. You know, I remember how I was always in love with Denzel Washington, and then I switched to um, Idris Alba, and I still call Bob Marley my husband and Beanie Man my husband, and you know, so it's, you know, it's Ralph Macchio was when I was in high school. That was, and Leif Garrett were on, you know, Teen Beat. That's all natural, and people, children with IDD are going to have the same, go through the same kind of thing. So these, again, I hope people will use them and find them very useful in having the conversations, right? And remember to look for those incidental moments. You know, use that time when you're showering, use that movie they're watching, use those times when, you know, you notice that they're getting, you know, maybe blushing looking at someone. Sometimes it's a family member who sometimes they'll have crushes on. And use that time, you know, to start a discussion, and do that a little at a time. If there are no more, are there any more questions? Any questions that, because we're about to, I think we end at 12:30.
Yes, that's correct.
So we only have 5 more minutes. Any questions, any thoughts from anyone who is watching?
Let's see.
Contact your care coordinator, get a therapist. Remember, therapy can be short-term, can help you through those pre-puberty time through to, you know, 19 or so. Look for those services, write those letters to your DDROs about getting these programs, funding these programs.
There are no questions on Facebook, Connie. So
Okay,
yeah.
awesome.
Any other questions from our participants? Please take advantage of our time. Please, we want to max it out. But yes, we will definitely share the link to this recording as well. We'll include the links to these websites in the follow-up email. And I'm sure we'll have Connie back really soon to talk about different things, because as you can tell, she's quite knowledgeable on a number of topics.
Thank you. And I think that's what it is. Keep writing into Synergy and letting them know, hey, I want to know about this, or I want to know about that. One of the things that I love to do is to talk about those things that you have never talked about before, or you have no clue who to go to talk to about it. And, you know, let's have that conversation. Let's talk.
Yes. All right. Well, with that, I guess we'll wrap this up, and I will activate the poll really quick. And yes, I will activate the poll. There will also be a survey. You can do one or the other. You do not have to do both. But if you have any comments for us, please, on what we can improve or what other topics you'd like to hear, you can put it in the chat. You can also include it in the survey. But yes, we definitely want to give you that option. But if not, thank you so much for being here.